tell you about a firm that I worked with. The person that was in charge of marketing had done everything right. They had built a solid LinkedIn presence. She'd set up an application first funnel. She was consistently getting 4 to 6 qualified calls booked every month, and these were large deal sizes. By every content and lead generation metric, the system was working, but the calls weren't converting. The prospects would show up, they'd have a good conversation, and then they would go quiet. And the firm was wondering whether the marketing was actually working or whether it just looked like it was working. When they brought me in, I dug into it, and the content honestly wasn't the issue. The leads were qualified. What wasn't working was everything that happened after the prospect clicked book a call. The marketing had done its job. It's just that the sales process and that follow-up hadn't caught up. And this video is really about that gap, because it's more common than people admit, and it's almost never getting talked about, especially within LinkedIn strategy content. Now, here's what happens in almost every boutique firm. When book calls aren't converting at a high enough rate, the content gets second guessed, application questions get rewritten, someone suggests trying a different platform, and the owner of the firm wonders if the ICP is wrong. And most of the time, none of that is actually the problem. The content was fine, the leads were qualified. What really broke down was the transition from interested enough to apply to ready to become a client. And when it comes to boutique professional firms, that transition requires a specific kind of clarity and structure that most firms never formally built. It's the moment your whole LinkedIn system either pays off or falls apart. And most firms have the front end working. The back end is held together with good intentions and really just a vague follow-up plan. In my experience, working with boutique firms on their LinkedIn systems, calls that don't convert almost always break down in one of 3 places. Let's talk about the first one. The first is when the owner shows up to the call cold. The application came in and someone booked a call and the owner just jumped on without reviewing the application first. It matters more than it really sounds. When a high trust buyer gets on a call with a professional service firm, they expect to feel like the firm already understands why they're there. They filled out an application, they gave context, they made themselves vulnerable enough to say, here's our situation. And if the first 5 minutes of the call, the owner is re-asking questions that were already answered in the application, that prospect is already deciding if the firm is worth their time. I mean, they filled out the application. They expect that you've read it. That fix is really simple. Honestly, just 10 minutes before every call, the owner or whoever owns that account, the account manager, has to review the application. That's it. And I see this all the time. The call really starts from a completely different place when people show up prepared. The second one is that nobody owns the follow-up process. So a lot of firms have the same version of, oh yeah, we'll follow up, which in practice means 1 email, 3 days later, and then silence. And high-ticket buyers in professional services do not make decisions in 72 hours. They think about it, they talk to their business partner, they get busy, they come back to it. So if your follow-up stops after 1 email, you're exiting the conversation right when the prospect is still in the middle of their decision process. And the firms that convert at a higher rate have a follow-up structure, not like a script. They have a structure. They know what gets sent, when, and by whom. And there's no, oh, I thought you were going to follow up, happening internally. Usually you need 4 touch points spread across 2 weeks, the same day, so within 2 hours, then day 3, then day 7, and then day 14. And that's not aggressive at all. It's showing up like a firm that means business. Now, the third one is that the prospect doesn't quite know what happens next. This one is subtle, but it kills more deals than people really realize. The call ends and it went well and both sides seemed interested, and then the prospect asks, so what's the next step? And the answer is vague, like we'll send something over, or we'll put together a proposal, or I'll be in touch. Honestly, vague next steps produce quiet pipelines. So your client is busy. We're all busy. They have a business to run. If the next step isn't clear and easy to take, they usually move it to later in their head, and later usually means never, because again, they get busy. The call should end with one specific next step, and it should be agreed upon by both sides. Not something like we'll be in touch and not like expect something from us next week, like a specific action, a specific timeline with somebody's name attached to it. You could be like, we'll be in touch next Wednesday with a partial proposal or a first draft of a proposal. Now, there's one more thing that I want to address here because it comes up with almost every firm that I work with, and that's unclear decision-making authority. So let's say the marketing person had the call, or maybe an associate did, but the owner's the one that needs to say yes. And if the owner hasn't been part of the conversation at all, the decision gets delayed, and sometimes indefinitely. Especially owners, they're always busy. They always have a full inbox. Now the prospect is waiting, and the person who's doing the marketing or how the call is waiting, and the owner is busy running their business or with high quality client work, and the deal just dies in the gap in between. And the fix isn't to put the owner on every call. It's to build 2 specific touch points in the process. Before the call, so 10 minutes in reviewing the application, so the owner knows who's coming in and what the call is likely to cover. And then within 24 hours after the call, a clear yes, no, or here's what I need to move forward. So that's 2 touch points, right? No more waiting, and then the conversion timelines really shorten, and the prospect feels that the weight of the entire firm is behind the conversation, not just one person acting on behalf of it. And you might be wondering what any of this has to do with LinkedIn specifically, and the answer is everything. The whole point of a LinkedIn system is to produce qualified conversations, but a qualified conversation is only worth something if your firm is set up to take it somewhere. LinkedIn content builds trust before the call. Your profile converts attention into applications. But if the back end of your process, the call structure, the follow-up, the decision-making isn't working, you're really just filling a leaky bucket. I see firms invest real effort into building their LinkedIn presence and then watch deals go quiet because nobody follows up. Nobody owns the follow-up. Or they go quiet because the owner showed up to the call cold, or because the next step is I'll be in touch. A LinkedIn system that works isn't just the content and the profile, it's the whole path from post to paid client. And every link in that chain has to be strong. If you watched this video and recognized your firm in any of these 3 breaking points, I want to point you somewhere practical. Now, I have what is called a LinkedIn profile audit, and that's where I would start if I were you, not because the profile is the only thing, because as you've seen, it's not, but because the profile is the first thing a qualified prospect sees after they find your content. And if that's not working, nothing downstream is gonna have a fair chance. Now, the audit covers 5 sections: your banner, your headline, your about us section, your featured section, and your links. And you will get specific fixes and understand what you need to address first. Just think of this as a starting audit before you build out the rest of your system. When you get the profile right first, then the content compounds in the way that it's supposed to. And then the calls start coming in from people who already know, like, and trust you. And then the back-end process we talked about today is what really closes them. And that's the full path, but the audit is the first step. Now, the link for the audit is in the description. The firm that I mentioned at the start of this video, once we identified where the process was breaking down and then fixed the follow-up structure and the call preparation, their conversion rate changed dramatically. Not overnight, but really meaningfully within a month. And the leads that were always there, right? But the system just needed to catch up with the leads that they have. Now, if that sounds familiar, start with your profile, and the link is below. Bye.